We're now recording. Took me a second. And so the recording will be available after the fact if you want to watch it. We also want to thank our sponsors, OG Systems, for offering us their space, our host organization. Is there anything you want to say about OG Systems?
I would just say OG Systems has been sponsoring the Scribes since the beginning, and we have a graphic facilitation practice here at OG Systems. Lauren and I are a part of that, and OG Systems, because it understands and appreciates the value of infusing visualization, strategic planning, OD, high-performing team concepts, human-centered design, design thinking, all of those things into the systems engineering firm that OG Systems actually is. They see the value in contributing to our work by letting us use this space. It's great. So,
thank you. Yeah, could have said it better. Thank you, Mel. So a couple of save the dates. Next Thursday, May 24th in the evening, we're going to have a webinar with a special guest from an organization, little organization most of us know called The Grove. So please join us for that. And then also on June 21st, we have a special, it's design thinking oriented, right? It's, I don't have the exact title, but we're going to have another in-person session on June 21st that is a repeat session for one that was done, I think, by the DCDT group, DC Design Thinking group.
Yeah, sketching.
Right.
Sketching for, yes.
Yeah.
Sketching.
It's sketching. It's a sketching workshop. We'll get the exact title before we end. Before I introduce our wonderful instructor, just a few housekeeping things for our facility. Please stay on the ground level. Don't go venturing upstairs and stay on this floor. Bathrooms are down the hall, across the hall, and to your left. If you need to use the restroom, they are open. We did check. Virtually, if you're joining us online, we just say if you get booted out for any reason, we have technical glitches, just dial back in. Like I said, we are recording. I'm not going to worry about muting unless it becomes a problem. So, just be aware of when you're on mute and, when you're not speaking. We have a couple adaptations of the activities for those who are online. You can always private chat me if you have any technical issues and I can troubleshoot those with you. And then you can also, if you want to, like you can see, we have the 3 videos up here, but you can also enlarge a video by clicking on it, or you can change to speaker view in order to see the screen larger. So, take a minute to play with the different features that you have on Zoom. Make sure you can see what you want to see. Yeah, so that's all the housekeeping I will say. Thanks for listening to my spiel. So our instructor, come here, Mom. Our wonderful instructor, co-instructor this evening, Lee Edwards, happens to also be my mother and my mentor. And she is she also works in the government contracting community, has worked also in health education, and specialty and facilitation, organization development, strategic communications, systems thinking. all of the above. And I know, you didn't expect that, did you? And actually, my mom was the first person that introduced me to graphic facilitation when she started using the Grove templates. And so it's a pleasure to have you and leading the workshop. So
how much fun.
Take over.
We'll probably have mom-daughter jokes going on. Okay, so just go around the room. So again, I think just quick intros of your name, and where you're working. Of course, you know each other already, but go ahead. And then just give me a scale from 1 to 5, like how familiar you are with systems thinking. Like just trying to get a feel for how new this actually is.
Sure. I'm Rachel Thompson. Live and work in DC. I just launched a new website actually for my business, Daring Studios. So I do a lot of the things that have been floating around here. I also just launched a meetup called Daring Leader Conversations, which I'm super excited about. Everyone's invited to launch party next Tuesday if you're in DC. And on a scale of 1 to 5 systems thinking, like, which one is 5?
5 high.
5 high? I don't know, 2 or 3. Like, I feel like I don't know. We'll see.
You've heard of it before.
I've heard of it. Like, I feel like I kind of know the ideas of it, and just I don't know if I've done a lot of work specifically with things called systems thinking, but I just feel very comfortable in like other things that I think will come out and I'll be like, oh yeah, like all the overlaps and things.
Liz Seaton, I work with the DC Department on Disability Services. It's my first graphic facilitation kind of maybe. I'm an aspiring graphic facilitator or something. And I don't know, I work on systems change where I am, so is that systems thinking, I guess so.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
in the right direction.
Yeah.
I'm Barb Siegel, and I'm a visual practitioner and also now officially a catalyst with the Plexus Institute, and Plexus applies complexity science to human organizations. So 1 to 5 with systems, I'd put me at 6.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, because that's complexity, which is like the next.
Yes.
My name is Trina Kane. I am a visual practitioner, facilitator, and leadership development instructor with the government. Because that
Sorry.
suspicious. I'm probably 3. I took a George Mason class. It was a 4-day workshop on systems thinking, and so I have some general background, but I'm looking forward to getting deeper into it. My name is Sarah. I work for a company called the Bone Group. We're the government contractor. I would say I'm at a 1.
Okay.
So I have a background in, I'm a creative service director there, so it's a background more in graphic design.
And let's see, Kate.
I'm Kate Rodman, and I know Lauren, which is how I ended up finding here. And I am still evolving. I have fingers in many pies. I have a background in intelligence analysis and web design. And my sister actually introduced me to systems thinking because she uses it in her economics understanding, and she teaches it. And so I actually I'm also a challenge course facilitator. So I have a book on how to do systems thinking through games and through experiential learning. And so I love seeing it from different perspectives. So I wanted to see it with yours.
Good. Okay, online, we got Roz.
Yeah, online. So, Raz, would you mind introducing yourself, telling us who you are and what are the other things on? Where are you?
Familiarity.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
We can.
All right, fantastic. My name is Will Scheck. I go by the nickname or call sign Raz. I'm a Red Team facilitator for the University of Foreign Military Cultural Studies at Fort Leavenworth. I've been instructing, teaching, facilitating for about 5 years, and one of our courses we teach is systems thinking. So I'm always growing. I would say I'm at a 4. I never want to say I'm a 5 or an expert at it because I know I'm always wanting to learn and grow. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And let's go to Mateo. Would you go next?
Sure thing. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Mateo Becky. I am a senior consultant with a firm in DC called The Clearing. I'm an OD and visual practitioner myself. And so I think systems thinking is really woven into OD just because they teach us to think about the different levels of the system and interacting with them, right? So I would grade myself on like maybe a 3.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Mateo. Let's go to Leslie. Is that Leslie Wolfbaum? You there, Leslie? Unmute yourself. Okay, we'll come back to you, Leslie. Lynn, would you go next?
Hi, Lauren. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm in a bad place. Hey, I am Little Roscoe. I'm a senior consultant with MedStar Health in DC. And I do a lot of work at the system level. We're a large organization with 30,000 employees. And I work with all of our senior leaders in strategic design and systems design. And I'm moving into an interesting space that I'm hoping to get more experience with systems, and that's into diversity and inclusion across the entire system. So I would put myself at about a 3, really looking forward to tonight. Thanks.
And just checking one more time, Leslie, if you are on, if you want to introduce yourself. I think she may have stepped away. Okay. That's it from online.
Okay.
Thank you.
So a little bit of my background, I work for Agility, or I had worked with Task, and Task became part of Agility, and have been around the intelligence community in several different locations for the last 20 years. But before that, I had worked for the American Red Cross for 16 years. So, and then I had been independent for a little while, so, but always in some mix of maybe instructional systems, organizational development strategy, etc. I guess in the 90s, I drowned myself in things like customer service, total quality management, performance measures, you know, the different pieces of organizational development. And with the fifth discipline and organizational learning, we got introduced at that time to systems thinking. So tonight is kind of an experiment a little bit. I've always had this feeling that Senge and the MIT folks, I don't know if you know, you all are familiar with the Bible, that they did a wonderful service for us. But there's 100 pages on systems thinking, and more than half of it is on that causal loop language and archetypes. And I think that's so intimidating that you don't start working with it. So it's nice to have the range of experience levels here, because I think what I'm trying to do is see if we can boil down the basics enough that you can give a group a little introduction, and then kind of go right into doing some storytelling, and have those stories come alive with some of this graphic recording and visualization. So with that, you'll all have to help out and see if this works. So the purposes of the workshop are basically to give some basics about systems thinking, to build a visual vocabulary, and do some practice. And don't worry, those of you who are really new to graphic recording, you'll be working in groups of at least 2, 2 each. So the one who wants to practice with the graphic recording can do that, and the other can tell the story, kind of thing. So that's how the process will go. I have one little kind of stand-up group experience that I think will work with 8 of us here, but it may fall apart. I have seen it done. I've been a participant in it and used it for like 12, 14, 15 people, but it might fall a little flat. But we'll do it anyway. You'll get the idea. Okay, and Barb, you mentioned complexity, and that was kind of cool because I pulled out this is a 2011 HBR, and for those online, it's September 2011, but the whole issue is on complexity. And so it hit me that systems thinking could really be incorporated or used as a problem-solving process for anything around the complexity issues. So that's something to remember. I mean, people may not call it systems thinking and all, and you may, I think in the course of this couple of hours, you'll kind of begin to realize that there's a whole bunch of situations, problem-solving situations, or they may be re-engineering kinds of situations. So any of those things may lend themselves to systems thinking. And, you know, I work with groups that if I said, oh, let's try some systems thinking, they go, you know, but if I trick them, you just start using it and you kind of move it along. So that's kind of the background of this. I have had some recent clients who were trying to get large numbers of people collaborating across agencies, kind of thing, and they have selected systems thinking as sort of a theme or a campaign kind of idea to get out there, and in a way, that's what renewed this for me lately, is to work with that and see how can we better communicate it. I think that's enough of an intro. All right, so let's go through this.
Would you like any assistance with your charts?
With my charts, well, maybe. I wanted to line them up over here so we don't lose them. Okay. We can just put them along the bottom. And I decided not to use slides, which is really different for me. And I tried to put something drawn on every flip chart. I feel like I've gone back to, you know, like 30 years ago. You know, like where we did everything on flip chart and then you did everything on transparencies, right? And then of course we went to PowerPoint and all of that. Now we're back to flip charts. But so hopefully you get 8 to 10 little drawings just on these flip charts kind of thing. So for those of you who are very familiar with systems thinking, just use this as an example of what I think is really the fundamentals if you were going to introduce a new group to it. Okay, so what's a system? Well, it's a collection of parts that interact together towards a common purpose. Okay, functions as a whole. Each aspect or element of the system has an effect on the whole. It interacts over time. There's other words we use, there's interdependence. And another thing, generally can't be subdivided, okay, without it just not making sense. But you might not know what all those parts are. Okay. So systems, you know, I mean, there's ecological systems, our bodies are systems, our cars are a system. But is a toolbox a system? No. I think you're at 2 now. Yeah, no, because it's a collection of items, but until you're using it, it's not a system in and of itself. Or at least that's a simplistic way to. Okay. All right, Lauren. Okay. Why think about systems? Okay, to get to the big picture, the whole system, and I think everybody here is and knows the value of if you get people beyond their boundaries, sharing their perspectives, looking across the organization, it tends to change their viewpoints. If you're giving them a shared vision, they tend to argue less and focus more on the problem solving. It's an opportunity to ask more questions and different kinds of questions than they might have asked. You get to the roots, just like process improvement kinds of things. You're often looking for the root of the problem, etc. You're looking at structures and patterns and problem solving. You're going to the repetitive word here, I think, is problem solving. And if somebody said, so what is systems thinking? You would say, well, it's a problem solving approach. But it's a little different in that we're really trying to create the big picture, not just the narrow focus. So, is everybody familiar with the elephant in the blind? Yep. If you were working with a group that was less familiar or just kind of needed needed to reinforce the point of the few blind men who were taken up to an elephant, but not told that this is an elephant, and asked to describe the part that they were feeling. And so one guy says, "Oh, this is sharp." "Oh, well, what is it?" "Oh, it must be a spear." And another guy is, "Well, this is rough and all. It must be a wall." And then finally, the one who's feeling the tail, and he says, "Well, it's wiggly. I guess it's a snake." You know, so until they can see the big picture, they really don't understand that it's an elephant. So we're trying to create shared meaning.
And Mateo, what book is that in?
Rhymes, yay!
Thank you. Good.
How did you know? I just went to go get it.
I threw that at you and you were prepared.
Okay, who's heard about the wolves at Yellowstone? A couple. Okay, this is going to be a little newer. So back in the earlier part of the 20th century, they began to realize that the valleys at Yellowstone were deteriorating. The vegetation was being lost, and those rivers were drying up, and so forth. And they were very confused about why this was going on. So ecologists started to study the problem. And long story short, they viewed the key problem is that the elk were overgrazing in the valleys, and they were eating and rubbing against them. And that was causing the loss of vegetation. So what they realized is they needed to reintroduce wolves, because the wolves, one, would keep the elks moving and all. They would go back up into the mountains and so forth, and not spend as much time in the valleys, which would give the valleys time to grow the vegetation and so forth. So you have wolves reintroduced, which I understand was like 1995-ish time frame, and not a lot, like 30 to 40. So there was a political issue that people in the area had been killing off wolves for years and years and years for safety reasons. So they had to kind of reintroduce with some persuasion. But when they did, then the elk moved to higher levels, and then the willow trees began to grow back again, and other vegetation. The beavers found food, and they could build their dams, and small animals had protective cover, and the streams expanded, providing fish. Birds had the willows as a habitat, and you have bears who would come back and for the berries and so forth. So you have this whole ecological response simply by putting elk back into the situation. So this is a classic example, a little story that people are using in these systems thinking situations. And in a way, our goal in some of these workshops is to help people, describe their story so that we can draw it and it becomes more real. Okay. So, that's another example. And we have systems in the workplace. I mean, it's the simplest thing. We have interrelationships across the organization. Think about one chart is a system, but often the problems here and the problems here and the problems here, they don't recognize them across these units. And the only way that they are going to really be able to solve some problems is having somebody from each unit getting together and creating that big picture. We're trying to find effective places for appropriate interventions. And sometimes if you try quick fixes, then what is a fix here is really a new problem here and here. Like a new problem-solving approach, if you try an intervention, you're looking and you're watching feedback to see what happens, and to see what happens over time. So these are all issues that are going on with systems in the workplace. So what is systems thinking? Obviously, here's the key. It's a problem-solving process. But that generally starts with a discovery, so that we don't necessarily predict what we think the solutions are from the beginning. We might have some hunches, but we're not bounding ourselves by that. In the workplace, we're trying to see that each person is a part of many systems. And systems thinking is looking for the patterns and interrelationships that form a system structure. We'll talk more about structure. So this is one of my favorite little, like simplest sort of loopy kind of diagrams. And you have those situations like there's an action and the consequence number 1, action 2, consequence number 2, action 3, consequence number 3. But we only see action 1 and consequence 3. We didn't see what was in the middle there. And it may be that action 2 and action 3 went on in somebody else's department, right? So until you get those folks together, you may really not be able to understand what happened here. And the solution could be here, not here. That's one of my simplest ways of describing that. Okay. Barb, you're welcome to, you're nodding, and you're welcome to jump in if you have.
How you're presenting it, right?
Okay. All right, so this is not my quote, but it's one of the favorite ones, that today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. When we try to do the quick fixes, we often have unintended consequences. So that's a part of the systems thinking process, storytelling. We're looking for the unintended consequences. Systems thinking helps when the symptoms are pervasive and fixes don't necessarily work. And people may have been looking at this system for a long time and tried different things, and it just is beyond that. And the reasons are unclear. Now, one of the systems thinking sort of archetype examples, it's called the tragedy of the commons. And it's any one of these situations where a good thing overdone becomes a problem, like traffic. You have roads, and so the cars go on them, and you need wider roads, and then you have more cars and you have wider roads. And so it's all for the common good, but the sad part is that we're always struggling with it. Now, I just used the word archetype, and all what Senge and his MIT colleagues did actually, and it's an advantage for all of us, is they research different archetypes. So what you would find if you go on to Systems Thinking 201 or 301 is more descriptions of similar patterns that you find in different areas. But that's a borderline of what seems to overwhelm newcomers to systems thinking. So we won't overdwell, but I just wanted to acknowledge that the whole half of systems thinking is much more scientific than okay. Good. Okay, so this is where I'm not sure my little game is going to work with so few people, but we'll try it anyway. What I'm trying to do is give you a kinesthetic experience where you can see interdependence, feedback, delays, stabilization, structure, leverage points. These are like 6 of the most fundamental ideas in systems thinking. And if kind of an example of this is when you think of a self-guided missile that is trying to get to an evasive target, and the target's moving around, right? But also the wind is pushing things around. So that's the problem. You have a self-guided missile and an evasive target, and you have the wind in the middle, and there may be other forces too going on, you might draw the structure of this process, something like this, like a current position, and here's the desired position. So there's an aim here, but there's feedback going here based on the target moving around, right? But we also have the wind influencing things. So you have your missile going through the wind and getting feedback from the wind and that. So you have several things. And so as people get more and more sophisticated with systems thinking, they'll start drawing these things naturally. Another part of the Senge stuff is called causal loop language, which we're not going to do because that's intimidating too. We just want people to gradually use arrows and drawings, like even like the wolf drawing in the valley, to begin to visualize what's going on here and expand the picture. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We need to form a circle. Everybody stand up, form a circle. Now the online folks, I think you'll be able to see what we're doing, but we'll see how meaningful it is once we've done it.
Yeah, for the folks online, we're going to run this sort of like a fishbowl experience. If you've ever been a part of that, where you have some people participating and then others observing on the outside. So just as we're doing this activity, make some observations, and we'll get your thoughts. We'll get your thoughts at the end. So.
And next, we'll be asking you for interpretive dance.
Yeah.
Just
How do you know me, Liz?
Yes.
Okay, so Lauren, are you going to?
Yes, I'm coming.
I need you, and then I need you too. Okay.
What's in yellow?
All right. So you are number 1.
Okay.
Sarah is number 2.
Thank you. 4. Lucky number 5.
Eight. Okay. Whatever works. Okay. All right, we formed a circle. I gave you your numbers. So each of you has become a reference point. Okay.
I don't know what that is, but I like where this is going.
Okay, so odd numbers. If you have an odd number, you're to pick out 2 other numbers among the reference points. But one of them has to be number 2. So Sarah has number 2. So the odd numbers have to have Sarah, and then you can pick out anybody else. Okay? The even numbers can pick out any 2 numbers in the room. So the instruction is, when I say go, is to move to a position where you are equal distance from the 2 numbers. Okay, now that doesn't mean that you have to be close. Like if I pick 2, I don't have to be here. I could be, way over here, as long as I was equal distance. So you move to a position.
Do you want more space? Or
No. Okay, no, it's fine to
Okay.
start like this. So you're going to move to a position where you're equal distance from your 2 chosen numbers. And just remember, evens have to have number 2.
odds have to have number 2.
Odds, sorry.
That was a test.
This is a good year. Okay, everybody's got it. Okay, go. Move around. See where you're equal to.
This is amazing, by the way.
Ted, did you do this in the use of self-retreat?
No, but I wish we had.
Ben, did you pick me? I
Nope.
picked you.
Oh my gosh, this actually does work even with 8 people.
Oh, yeah.
Although I think
They're
this
still moving. They're frustrating you, Barb?
Yeah.
You're frustrating.
stabilization. Woo-hoo! now Sarah stays, but you put your number down there, and who's the other one?
I'm number 4, yeah.
Okay, so just put number 4 down.
On the floor?
No, just
On your belly.
Just on your belly. You can't see over here. Okay, so the new instruction is those folks, 7 and 4, have to stay in place. If 7 and 4 are one of your numbers, you got to choose another number and act as if they're not part of it. Okay? All right, go. But number 2 is still. No,
I have to move?
No, you're not. No, you still the odds still have to have number 2. Numbers. Okay. So
now we have to restabilize.
you have to reset. If you chose 4 or 7, you have to choose a new number and restabilize.
Excuse me.
Oh, we've lost number 2, you've lost your.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think there is a third round. I don't think it'll work. I like to without
You wanna try?
just more people. Actually, what it involves is taking some people completely out of the situation and doing get it. But actually, if you take elements or reference points out of the system, things should go faster.
Right.
So that's
And it
yeah.
did.
Yeah. It did. Yeah. All right. Okay, go sit down.
Yay!
That was fun to watch.
I got it.
Like that. Make sure that if you do your question, get Randy and Lynn and Mateo's.
I know. The
Okay.
lurkers.
Well, let's go there first. Our online folks, you go in order and ask what they think they saw.
So Lynn, Raz, or Mateo, unmute yourself, and if you want to share a couple of observations about what you noticed. Or Leslie, if she's on now.
Did you call us the lurkers?
The lurkers.
Yes, the lurkers. The lurkers.
I protest.
Great. Because every time, well, the reason, if I may, just for a moment, the reason I said that is that, like, right before we started, I turned and I looked, and you guys were enraptured. Like, you were, it's about this is going to happen. This is going to be so interesting. It was all, like, I wish I could have done a screen capture. It was awesome. I loved it. Yeah.
Cool. The first reaction was, first off, that was awesome to watch. Fantastic to see action reaction, right, for the different elements in it, as to a concept that I've run into called dependent origination. So, like, one thing is connected to another thing, which is connected to another thing. So it just seemed like a never-ending concatenation of events.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Raz or Lynn?
I really enjoyed the stabilization part. It kind of, the imagery that it made me think of was just like a pebble being dropped into a bucket of water, and you just see all the ripple effects, and suddenly everything just settles out. And I really enjoyed the visual.
Good. Thank you. And then Lynn or Leslie, you're on.
Lauren, it was amazing to watch from our view, and I thought of a couple things, but one of them was an ant farm. At first, it was like watching on an ant farm. Yeah, and it really was amazing view to watch. And then I also thought of organic chemistry models with all of the pieces in the system together when you stabilize. So it was awesome to watch from our view.
Good. It worked.
That was really. And then I don't know, Leslie, if you joined us, any thoughts? Okay. That's it from online.
Okay, so let's just make sure we have like a simple definition of each of these words. You've almost said it. So for interdependence, we can say they're relationships among the reference points. It's just a simple way of thinking about it. Feedback, like the interaction or visual changes that are occurring based on performance. If you have any better thoughts about this, you know. Stabilization is when the system becomes into a more predictable pattern, where it stops or there's a pause. Delays, the time it takes to get from one place to another in the system. And structure. And structure can be rules or the physical environment or policies or anything that is bounding the system. And then leverage points. Who is the leverage point? Two. Yeah. and then in the Yellowstone, we have really the wolves or elks being the leverage point, because everything else is dependent on them. Or you could think of, like in process workflow, process improvement, you think of upstream and downstream. So upstream things that are affecting all the downstream things. Okay. All right. So those being like fundamental 6 words. All right. So now we're going to do our graphic jam. Okay. And everybody's been in the graphic jam before, except for Sarah, right? Okay. No, I don't know. I think you had. Okay. Because they do them all the time. So what it is, we put most of these words up around the room. And when we say go, everybody go to one of the flip charts. And we've got markers over here to share. And we're going to give you a minute to draw something, a visual, an icon, or whatever, that applies to that word. And this is a way of building visual vocabulary. I will say, I came up with all these words, and then I looked at my, I have one of those index card sets where you have the word on one side, and on the other side is a sample icon of some sort. And I only had 3 words out of this list. And so I'm like, oh, wow. So these are words that actually we may not use all the time as graphic recorders, graphic facilitators. So hopefully it will be helpful to have some ideas. So Lauren or Ben, are there any more instructions for running the graphic jam?
For the folks online.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. So directions for the folks online. I am going to post the list of words in the chat, or you also have them on the screen. And so what I'll invite you to do is just pick one word to start with, and then you'll have 1 minute to draw your icons or visuals that represent that word. And then when we say switch, what you'll do is you'll just switch to the next word down on the list instead of on a different flip chart. So that's your modification.
Oh, can they just go to the right?
For the folks online, it'll be like the list. So they'll just go to the next word. Down. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. No worries.
But in here, you're just gonna every time we say change, you go to the one to the right.
Yeah. Okay. And if we can, if you would like to share your drawings online, either by holding up your work at the end, or you can post it, take a picture, post it in the Google Doc that was shared, we can do that, but that's optional.
Okay, everybody got a couple of markers?
How long are we gonna have for each one?
About a minute.
And we're gonna do all of them? Each of us are gonna do all of them?
Yeah, although, well, yeah, Ben and Lorna, so we may not get to all of them. I would say go to one you like. Because there's more than enough here. So they're across the room here, and then there's 6 of them along here, leverage points, interdependence. So go to one that you like.
That's right. And no pressure, but this will be really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Thanks in advance.
There's a white color and then the regular ones are over.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You say go?
Sure. Ready, go. So if you're online, pick a word and start drawing. And I will join in.
Do we wait and then
Do we just do one
move on, or we do like move on?
You can move on. I think I'm done. I think we have plenty of, yeah, you can move on.
I think we're done.
You can, it's up to you. You can either draw more than one drawing for that word, or I think you just said you can switch to another one if you would like to.
If you're done with what you have before the minute's up, you can go to another one. It's empty.
I'll go this one.
Okay, wherever you are, switch to another chart. Or switch to another word. And starting now. Rachel's great.
I'm going to where I'm attracted to.
Good. Probably around this. You're just-
I think we've got plenty of time.
Okay.
So let's just kind of keep it going.
Okay. And switch to another chart.
Yeah.
And 1 minute, go.
The algebra.
I need yellow.
I was just thinking the same thing. Yellow?
Thank you.
And switch, unless you already got.
I like that traffic. That's great.
just gonna do the switching. You guys are kind of naturally gravitating, so just, I'll keep doing the timer just as a reminder to not stay on one drawing for too long.
We have something on every chart.
Yeah. More like a graphic mishmash.
Yeah.
That's cool. If you're following the 1 minute, you can switch or go on to another one. How you doing online? Thumbs up, Mateo? Good? Getting to lots of words? Cool. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Love it. What do you think? Maybe 3 more minutes to hit as many?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So take another 3 minutes, maybe 4.
That's actually exactly where we are, because
Cool.
I've actually claimed some gold.
Okay,
So I've
perfect.
got 3 left.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, 3 more minutes just to hit as many other words as you can.
Just whack.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good also. Yeah. I was gonna do it.
Yeah, and we're going to transfer these, right, Lauren, to where we, if we can keep them, we can.
You can take photos, yeah.
Take
we'll
photos
photograph
and,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll photograph.
Cool.
Oh, I can sorry.
I know I would. Yeah, now I'm both like good.
Take about 30 more seconds.
It seems like everybody's had a chance to kind of walk around and see.
Maybe doing a little gallery walk
Okay,
to good, just a couple minutes, 1 or 2 minutes.
okay. Can you lead the gallery walk?
Yes. Cool. So if you're online and you want to hold up your drawings, you can do that. You can also email them to me and I'll share them. Or you can drop them into the Google document. Or you can keep it to yourself. And then if you're in the room, take a couple of minutes and just look around at what you see, make some observations. Oh, isn't that interesting how they visualize that? Feel like an artist. And I'll try to pan the camera here, so folks online. I'm just gonna do a little panning.
This one too.
You enjoying the ride, Mateo?
Sorry, what was that?
I said, are you enjoying the ride?
Yes, actually, that was pretty awesome. Thank you.
See, I can show you what's over here. I can't show you everything, unfortunately. But I can show you a couple of things.
Where's that? What is that? Google 360-degree camera.
I know, that's what we need. Does anyone have one image that they want to point out something special about? Just kind of spit out.
I love hammer and nail. I mean, that is such a classic quick fix.
The hammer and nail.
Yeah,
Okay.
if it's a nail, it needs a hammer.
Right. Yeah. What else?
I like the problem with the boulder in the path.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. So for those of you on a phone, there's sort of like the Indiana Jones boulder running over some footprints as an example of how to draw a problem. Yeah. What other observations?
From a sketching perspective, for collaboration, I love that the example is on the page. There are multiple groups of people, but one of the groups has one line that connects one hand on one end to the other hand on the other end, the jumping rope. And so it puts a very simple but easy to translate problem in the hands of the people who are collaborating. And I've never thought to do that. I think that's awesome.
Nice. So there's always a connection. Good. I like how you showed some connections between multiple drawings on the page. Yeah. What else?
Cause and effect. Could be slipping on the banana peel be
Perfect.
just more classic
Yeah.
and simple, but you just know in 1 second what it means.
Excellent. So capturing cause and effect as banana.
I like several of the delays. I like the traffic one and the rocks ahead and the line to the blocks with the lines in the middle and the roadblock. So all of those, I was having trouble myself thinking, what would I do for delays? So that,
Excellent.
okay.
Mateo, are you brave? Would you like to hold up or show anything you got? Oh, look, okay, hang on, let me share my screen. Mateo has put something in our Google Drive. So.
Yay. And I love the how effective some of the drawings were in conveying these concepts, right? So
Yeah.
low overhead and maximum impact.
That's gorgeous. I like the band-aid.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Looking beyond the boundaries. Yep. Leverage points.
And a Band-Aid.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's a keeper.
Awesome. Okay, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So when Ben and Lauren and Trent and I got together to talk about this session, we thought if we were to create a new canvas, or a new template, like the growth templates, for systems thinking, what might we use in a jiffy? And we came back to the iceberg model. And actually, if you search, Google search on iceberg model for systems thinking, a number of references will come up and so forth. But basically, it said above the waterline are things that you can see, the events and the data. Then just below, then at the next level down are looking at trends and patterns. So symptoms over time. And then next level down would be the underlying structures of the rules, boundaries, policies, traditions, relationships between the parts, and so forth. And then finally, the mental models, assumptions, beliefs, visions, and so forth that often drive the whole thing, but maybe buried down here. So it's a way, I've been thinking, like you're in some of these facilitation situations and all of a sudden you can kind of hear a problem, but they're not even stating the problem very well. I mean, there's a lot of confusion. And so this is something you could draw real fast, even on a flip chart, or use the large wallpaper, draw that, have them just brainstorm with Post-its or whatever, things that they think about in different levels, and all of a sudden you've got at least the beginning of some problem-solving process without even having to do anything else. So this is our recommendation for a template. All right, so we'll shift gears. To the story. So this was another experiment or like a theory that I've had particularly about systems thinking. All that we have done, it's all nice, but it doesn't mean a lot to people until they really start thinking about how it applies to themselves in the work. So system stories that might occur to folks would be anything that is important to you, your team, your program, that it's persistent, a problem that's persistent over time. Some of the history is known, okay, because that's helpful. But the factors may change. Old solutions didn't work. You know that it requires a big picture and working across the organization. And this, we can't forget that we're in this world of constantly new and emerging technologies, new stuff all the time. So like maybe the group is just grappling with a new trend, a new challenge that came down the pipe. Okay. So these next couple of charts, I'm really trying to kind of gear you up for thinking of a story you might tell here, and it can be a fairly simple one. Okay, so that we can draw it. So this is stage one and trying to kind of like, if anything hits you, that might work. Okay, here's a storytelling template which you don't have to follow, but sometimes it helps. And I found when I've done brainstorming for storytelling, in particular, a year or so ago, did one for data science, and we needed success stories with data science. And and these are all technical people; they're not used to telling stories. But when I gave them a template like this, and actually broke up into small groups so that they were telling each other the story first. They didn't have to get all to tell the story for a bigger group. But we used the template, they told the story to each other, they put their key points on flip chart paper, and then they could retell the story to the whole group, where we expanded it even more. So I really recommend small group to large group, using a template to help people get started. Now at that point, I wasn't into the visual recording, okay? And while the stories were good, I just had this sense that working with even one symbol on a page with some of this data in the background makes it like, oh, I remember that story, like, so it just becomes more alive, okay? So a template, like, what's the problem or question being addressed? Who's it for? Who are the partners that have come together to work on it? What approaches are they using? And these could be any kind of systems. It can be as simple as, we got 5 people together from several different parts of the organization, and this is what they learned from each other that they didn't know before. just very basic stuff. What options or actions could they take, or did they take, okay, if they have finished the story? So you have alternative solutions bubbling up. And then what did they choose to do? Now we got to remember that with systems thinking, frequently more than one solution is needed, because there's several problems going on causing the problem. There's some synergy between several parts of the system that are causing a problem. So there might be several things that a group needs to discover, that then if they make intervention, like 3 interventions at the same time, it might make a difference. When if they did one at a time, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, so we have to kind of remember that. But then what were the outcomes? What happened? What did they learn? So that's kind of a story template to just help process. Okay, so then I thought, well, what are some different kinds of, besides all of this that you have grown very quickly, what are some visual graphics we might use? We said the iceberg might work. The 5 whys, just kind of keep saying, well, why? Well, then why did that happen? Well, why did that happen? And why did that happen? So there's the 5 whys. You can do puzzle pieces. Go back to the work chart. Just arrows in a circle. We have some arrows around. Yeah, we have things, arrows in a circle. Okay. A Venn diagram. Just a sequence of events. It can be linear, especially if they're thinking linear. Maybe, like you could put a sequence of, line sequence of events across the top, but then you might discover that there's some feedback. Trend charts. The causal loop language. I just put it in there. That's not that we're dealing with that now. Leverage points. Just pictures of the different reference points, and then where the leverage point might be. And then just illustrations for elements of a story. So any of those things might work. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do.
Do you want me to leave this up? Or?
Yeah, we can leave that one up. I think I've given enough examples. Okay, so what we like to do is, and this works naturally, somebody tell a story and the other person just see if there's a visual way to record the story or the elements of the story.
Just any story.
That's a systems, that relates to systems thinking. Now, here's where, if you're new to it, it's gonna be a little bit harder. But I would say, don't worry about it. You might have in your mind something, just a time when several people got together from different units and they came together. What was the problem? How did they solve it? Okay.
Are you doing this in pairs?
I think pairs. Yeah. Or do you think we should do 3?
I would say pairs.
Are you all okay with pairs?
And then if you're online, you're gonna do this as an individual exercise.
Can you put them in a chat room?
Yes.
What is the chat?
Yeah, I can. Let me think about that.
Does everybody have, I mean, some of you have regular paper. We could, if you want to use a flip chart, we'll just use these. You can move some of the papers over and you can use a flip chart if you want. What do you want to do? You want to use your paper? Or you want?
I know paper, but I can, my yellow. That's there.
Okay. Have some.
Yes.
Oh, you got okay.
I mean, mine is like, sure. Let's look at one of our current. What kind of stories to tell? Which is, what's the profile? My story is a story about.
It could be about intentions of it could be a story where people brainstorm cause and effects.
Operating in that system.
Any kind of discussion of different perspectives.
So the, in one state and national borders, right? And then, okay, that's what part
some family or group of 5 to 10 people, and it's we've done it, so it could be different perspectives. Of even a hero journey.
One of them.
Is it an individual story? I'm sorry.
Pardon me?
Is it an individual personal story?
Yeah, is it something I've experienced or can I be like, or
It can be.
seen?
Yeah.
They're the program, the other college, all of the family dysfunction. College.
I have several of those.
You have a daughter that's just very.
She's such a family.
Yes. College people.
Could be a lessons learned thing.
Players
That, like, schools, the
Generally
generally agile team, but, all types of stuff they kind of look
And
at
then
over a period of
my
time.
organization.
What worked,
I
what
think what
didn't
I'm
work.
having trouble right now is that, like I understand all those things, like, nothing, like, a particular, our, story that illustrates that happening isn't popping up. Like, I don't know, maybe trying to look at this thing, that, and then this is what it was.
All players across all of this.
You might want to try
Be brought on board.
You just try telling the story, she might get some ideas.
Be staged for movement, so the program has to be set up. Funding has to be established. Materials have to be developed. Students need to be recruited. Or staff need to be trained to their sports. There's like.
Raz, is this making sense? I don't know if you were.
Place that's never been in place before here, where there are multiple models elsewhere. Yes, that's our.
So folks online, if you have any questions, you can chat in or unmute yourself and ask.
The problem is trying to figure out how to stage.
Putting in the instructions.
And then create a feedback loop so that you can test what's going on. So at the end of year 1, they say we want to make this happen in a good way. And then they were not this small, but they were right? Additional grant to pay for it.
Yeah, I had like
certain program. So
putting that in the chat, so.
Or like an
how to put in place all of those pieces.
she's always across the whole system. There's just a huge people who are involved, and there's nobody who's a full-time job to do that, to do that.
I think we're clear. I think we may have lost a couple people. That's why I wasn't sure if it was worth to do. Yeah, it wasn't just breakout groups, but I mean, it is at college, being out for the coordination conference.
Yeah.
That was a middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I should ask us before we have to discussion government about why.
Yeah.
So the business case has to be more money. Because the idea might be, students with accommodation. Students with accommodation, but functional disabilities.
Is that interesting to know? I saw last night, where I saw like something that could conversation and then I saw later a retelling of the conversation from like one perspective. And I was like, that's not, it was such a the things that were like sad and like on how race that I think felt to be like a world and right there. Yeah, and compares them. Interesting. And it's kind of got to work like a workplace dynamic. And then the other conversations.
It improves people's independence, it improves their social skills. They learn things.
But I mean, it's like, you know, all kind of systems. It's like a very
college students.
Yeah. It's like a year and affect like conversations happen and perceptions happen.
They've been committed to so they found it's pretty.
Yeah, but especially because like, you know, seeing the conversation happen and then seeing someone else talk about it.
Yeah.
And then one thing is the only thing going there. So it's kind of like, you know,
So that was just one of the reasons that other countries in college, we have a lot of financial college.
yeah, I got a lot.
We
can let it out over here.
Well, in some cases, it's their families, like also, in some cases, it would be their families, in some cases, it would be
I'll give you a story.
in some cases, they're just drawing.
So I'm gonna just tell this. Yesterday I said,
Why we did it, or why we did
and set off the understanding someone like things like that. And there was fights which happened. And I saw one of the parties tell somebody about the conversation. One of them was interested to understand because her interpretation of what happened was had very different like interpretations and just.
Okay, great.
Than what you thought you would.
What I understood.
And so want to get these kids, they want to get this out, right?
It wasn't there.
They're no longer the responsibility.
So like, you know, I know. So the first
This
I
is
used
it.
when I
Well, it might not be the best thing for a lot of these kids.
her name is Kelly. She
No, I
was our
agree.
town was kind of she's so she would remember and agree. The bar at the place is kind of a casual thing and then you know just
And so
to chat
and so there,
and
so part of what you have to learn is,
how's that and you know kind of
not every person wants to.
her his like kind of initial comment is you know, oh hey like I remember how it started, but you know, and like the conversation was about like so she found out by another person that she accidentally deleted this what we see reading teams, it's like this channel from last year. And then you know she said, oh yeah, I wasn't on that team, so it could be me kind of thing. But it was very like from one perspective, it was kind of very much I was very joking, not like not oh you're in trouble. It's like oh just
So what you do is a storytelling program. The kids
teasing like light thing.
Like by Tom,
Yeah.
constituents.
not necessarily by
Right.
Rachel. this aspect.
Yeah.
No, but I think that that's like.
And are you like part of the conversation or are you just hearing it?
Stories.
Just hearing it. Like, you know, like I know, it's like the situation is very, you know, people are just talking and like, oh, like, I'm like, they're talking about it.
And so, you know, then it's.
Like,
That's why
I went to
you
like
know, they went to college
last year. It's like they
before that,
basically go to your year's
house.
and it's just going, so it's like, that's all right. This is what they do, like a conversation with they're talking about the content, they went traveling, so kind of it came with like,
They met new people.
you know, I saw this and I was like,
They lived
I
independently
perceive
in their
as,
own,
you know,
you
the
know,
charm
place with other
like
people.
not really saying anything.
Yes, some had academics and some had
Sometimes people that they
sports independent.
like open your conversation about this conference and like, oh, they were looking for this before, so it was there, and apparently, she accidentally did it.
So this is,
That's what the practice was at.
some people belong in both ends, some
I think other conversation later, because and then we were at like dinner with other people, and she was retelling the story.
so they don't
About
have
how, like, what she noticed was that Tom,
like, so if you're gonna,
that she had one compromise the other day, to start the conversation was,
people who want, you know,
say, hey, how are you? Like, we started with kind of this work about this conference, and then she that her, you know, called her, and she felt bad.
some schools have much.
Or something that she did, or she
Right, some people want that, some people go for like.
That's interesting.
And it can be, is, you know, and it can be, that can be.
So just kind of,
Feelings, right?
and then there's also like conversations about like Tom,
Right.
personal, I think it's before that, about how,
Or, you know, whatever it is.
that he uses calendars differently, like he actually uses calendars, and like he does
Like, you know, your entry level,
like he starts with calendars.
Very correct.
And then, you know, people accept, they don't accept, patients.
Some people read this,
Like,
some people might go, right now, you've been looking
this
at
other person that he'll never
one year
accept
program where they will
invitation.
participation.
Basically, it's like,
That
Tom
was,
is, you know, meeting,
a range of skills
you know,
that
the meetings to be at.
and then we showed a potential for college per year,
And other people are just like, oh, yeah,
you know,
just
learn
my
the
calendar
following skills.
and send it to me. when you decide.
Patience, you
So I
know,
think it's an interesting, there's a problem there about
math,
the communication and expectation.
and whatever. So there's different ways to kind of.
No, like,
Program that might work, so, and different colleges and different ways.
Yeah.
There's like,
with how people are.
and part of what we're building, some of that is pretty straight ID,
On like some on both.
outside of the student who's studying, either studying or social group. Or education.
How in their perspective. So I have no idea. This is.
So as I'm thinking what I can consider.
My, be honest. So what? Because you. Right, that was negative down there. But the conversation was
Yeah.
both ways.
It was interesting because I know Kelly really well, and I know Tom really well. And from my knowledge of Tom, I was very, he wasn't negative, but it was definitely perceived as.
Because the solution might be
As negative.
Well,
encouraging.
so I was, when you told this part of the story, I mean, when you told this part of the story, so this was, you know, step two.
So I know that.
In that she made you feel bad,
But having.
but that doesn't mean she blames it on Tom, right? So that would be something to tease out, because if
Yeah.
you think you've done something wrong, well, then, you know, then it's possible. Then you can still feel bad, even though you don't blame the messenger.
So I think the interesting is that, like, is what I think what I saw was, and here too, is that
Where's the pressure?
she didn't feel bad because she didn't think she did anything wrong.
Because she now
Right.
doesn't believe she can get it
Yeah.
done.
Right.
At the DC. She's like,
But then she can also be worried that she
Because
has
we provide
whatever.
or that he would.
Right. And so, I mean, what I was here, I was thinking about it in the iceberg model, that
And then we have.
a lot of what I was hearing here under communication protocols, like you had, it's kind of like it'll start with the
And there's some very good
Right.
data on this.
Yeah.
Knowledge about job outcomes.
And then, but then as it comes down to Tom and everybody else, I don't know, or but whatever, then, you know, for him, it's still very much, you know, I also want to put like, handcuffs, you know, I mean, it's supposed to be a commitment, it's supposed to be firm and true.
Like, if you're gonna be there, be there. If you're gonna be there, say you're gonna be there. If
Right.
you're not, say you're not.
Right, and so, and over here, this is kind of
Very-
like it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It's like if my day works out.
So this one becomes like,
We're trying to. It's not even hourglass.
yeah, like, yeah,
Like a
it's a
cabana.
sundial.
It's a sundial.
It's a sundial.
Sometimes the clouds are out.
Right, exactly, that's perfect, so
Yeah.
sundial is really the right metaphor, so it's a sundial, and our job doesn't work at night,
Doesn't work at
doesn't
night.
work at cloud days.
Clouds are out, you know, the day can change, like.
So, yeah, so more like a sundial where he is still
Subset of our kids.
seeing
Because.
the calendar, and he wants it really, so actually, so it'd be more like, instead of this,
It's all about,
Um,
we are operating, we have a debt.
you're at a clock, and what's the county doing, it is the
But that's
electronic
just
clock,
Yeah.
you know,
that you have.
and these guys are all doing
It's not
sundial.
Like, it's also a mix of, you know, how people perceive time, and also.
Okay, and I would still start.
Right.
She said tell us.
So that's just the underlying assumption, right? You know, so this is how they're, what they're.
System.
We've already got
And then the underlying
We
assumptions
know
are,
we want to have it
like
as
Tom, people who don't make
But that's not.
clackers,
The
they are
system.
not, you can't trust them. And these people are like, we make calendars, we're rigid,
80%.
and we're flexible, and if you just.
But it just, there's a set of things.
Right,
So
yeah.
you have
And then,
80%
and
of your kids.
exactly, because it said.
And you've
I mean,
identified.
this, it's people, this is one project.
Well, right now, in order to like, if we want, if they want our local.
But
Yes,
their
if
way.
community college,
So then how much do you want to actually do?
It's interesting.
if they want to go to university or
You know, like
four-year
your
program,
parents or over here.
right now they're
You know, like the things they say are like they say
send students to ID
here.
here, we have to send them.
It's also
It's far more expensive.
Yeah,
But
this needs to be
the
more,
real
you know, and they are supposed to need to.
is providing service.
Right. Right.
You'll find a new job.
So that's, yeah, so that might be another way to look at
Be
this.
flexible this way.
You guys are muted. There you go.
Can we come back together?
Oh.
So, should we start with Mateo and let him describe his story?
That sounds good to me. Mateo, are you ready to walk us through your system here?
If it's even a system. Is it even a system? I don't know. We'll see. So what's missing here is an element of time, but let's just understand that there's a time plane in the process here. So retention area number 1, laid off while up in Jersey. So that precipitated me to pick up and move into DC. Found a oddly work in IT and higher ed, first at GW and then at AU. And then eventually, through a variety of other events, I was able to slide into consulting, which is area number 5. And I was trying to look back at some of the founding rules of what a system is. I was trying to use, the US as an overarching system, interconnected together in terms of locations and concatenation of events. There seems to be interdependence. Is that a proper representation?
It works. So it changes over time. One thing leading to another. It's building a career, right? You move from one thing to another. Taking advantage of opportunity. Any other observations?
I like your giant pink slip.
Okay.
It's sort of like, sorry, I have one observation. It's sort of like Mateo is the system. This is like, it's like Mateo's career is the system. I'm like looking at the thing. So it functions as a whole. Each part of your journey has impacted you as a system of knowledge in a way.
Nice.
Mic drop. Thanks, Mateo.
Okay, so if we can do some quick, like what happened. You don't have to share every story, but if you want to just kind of give us an idea of what happened in the process of telling the story, and what you drew, and maybe how the drawing helped the story. What?
So I feel like I had to hear the whole story before I could just jump in, and I don't know, like, if that's
okay.
part of the process or if you're supposed to just start. You know what I mean?
I turned around and he said, that is how Kelvy Bird works. Like that is systems thinking, graphic recording. Like you listen, you take notes. Like you need to understand. Plug, here's your book, it's really awesome. Yes, I'll just say, read her book. It's really incredible. If the idea of incorporating systems thinking into how you show up as a visual practitioner, if that like really resonates with you, and you intuitively said, "Gosh, I need to wait. I need to listen." Like, what is the system here? Using Mateo's example, at what point would it have occurred to the graphic recorder that geography could have been the system, right? Or Mateo himself as a body of knowledge could have been the system. That might be something that needs to reveal itself over time through this story. Anyway, so hopefully I'm like validating and echoing what you're saying. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I think that, how many people had to hear pretty much the whole story before they could start drawing? Not everyone.
Well, one thing I saw was I think one of the probably best metaphors for system thinking is like you're remodeling a house. Because it's like, just the idea that, you pull out a wall to fix the plumbing and then you're like, oh, found a black hole and you also have to rewire the whole house. So like, I don't know, I really like that.
It's a system that's a spiral that goes out of control.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know. I just like the idea, the metaphor of it, like the big house is the big picture, and all the things working together. Like that just really kind of like it's a system that's very familiar and like a metaphor people really understand. So I just really liked it.
Frequently, I can listen to, I might need to listen to about half the story, and then I start scribbling. I may just be using arrows and circles and stuff like that. Okay, they told me about this, they told me about that, and all, and then I start drawing. So about halfway through. Otherwise, I forget the beginning of the story. So I think it can work either way.
For me, what was interesting was I was listening, but then Rachel used a couple phrases that really stuck in my head that I thought she was thinking were critical. You said the word strain point. And I went, okay, that's going to be important. I now have the anchor of what's coming in. And so where does that lead me? And so that's how I started it.
Trina, you were recording for.
I recorded for Sarah. We both looked at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the depiction that Sarah has.
Would you, I was wondering if I could trouble you to maybe come stand right in front of the flip chart, and can I zoom in on you and show your picture? Is that okay? Sure. Let me see what I can do. Yeah, technology. Woo! Woo! Thank you.
Nice.
So I was telling the story, I was recently in Cairo, Egypt, and it's a really dirty city. And I was told that it wasn't always dirty. It's only recently dirty after the revolution, because there's a whole cast of people in Cairo known as the garbage collectors who come to your apartment building basically daily or weekly and collect your garbage directly from your apartment. Well, the city was pretty darn clean, but the streets were not super clean. So the government decided to contract a company to clean the streets and forced everyone to pay for the street cleaners, and no one could get out of paying for the street cleaners. So not only were they paying for the street cleaners, but they were paying for the garbage people to come pick up their garbage. So everyone in the town, in the city, said, screw that. Why am I double paying for my garbage collecting? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my garbage, and rather than have have the garbage collectors collect it, I'm just going to go toss all my garbage into the street. And so,
An unintended consequence.
Talk about
I don't know, that to me that's rational thinking. If you ask me, that's not unintended. It may not have been thought about, but that's
so
rational.
now you've got all of this garbage in the street. You still have the garbage collectors, the big trucks who are coming by cleaning the street, but now the garbage collectors who came to your house don't have jobs because their jobs have been taken away. You now have more disease because you have all of this garbage in the street, and now you have a whole lot more rabid dogs and cats because you've got all this food waste that's laying around that they are now fighting over.
Yeah, that's, to me, is the unintended consequence. We just
Yeah.
didn't go that step further.
And so thinking about how the whole system works, they were in pretty good homeostasis. With this, everything was working and everything was being cleaned up and people were happy and people had jobs. And then you threw in what sounds like a really great idea. Hey, let's clean up the streets a little bit more. And what you end up doing is causing disease and everything else, it was just fascinating.
Cool. Excellent. How about you guys?
I'm learning things about systems from my colleague here, so I have now quickly sketched a graphic while we're talking about this.
Want to share it? Are you ready?
Yes, I do want to.
Yeah! Come on up,
Here it
Liz.
is.
Welcome.
You know.
Yay! Yay, Liz.
Yes, I do want to share. So we're the Department on Disability Services, and one of our departments is the Vocational Rehabilitation Administration. So basically, we help people with disabilities find jobs. Here we're talking about students coming out of school. that particular set. So not people trying to re-career or, you know, they had one career and they became disabled from doing that job and something else. Here we're talking about really kids coming out of school, middle school, high school, and then, you know, where are they gonna go from here and how can we help them all have an employment goal and do this steps that they need to take to do that. So some of the students, my friend there taught me, some of the students, we're already serving them. We can do better and we're working on that, but there is some subset of the students that we're working with, and here we're talking about students in schools with intellectual disabilities. I'm talking about that subset, so not necessarily, you know, sort of a kid who uses with a mobility access issue like a wheelchair or something like that. That's a different set of, here we're talking about kids with intellectual disabilities. That may be their sole disability, they may be other disabilities. Some people are so disabled and have health problems that they just need full-time care and they're unable to work, right? And so we have a different set of services we can provide for them. But once you move into but most people fall into a category where they can work at something at some point, maybe full-time, maybe part-time, and most of them were serving. Some people get the kind of schooling, training, on-the-job training where they can do kind of retail or janitorial jobs. Some people become flexible, self-employed. Some people learn jobs in voc ed or need additional training. And they go to sort of voc ed training programs. I'm just calling it that for shorthand. Some people go to community college to learn some very specific kind of skills that will help them move on to, you know, so hospitality or, you know, I'm gonna call it money math, you know, like how to really deal with, you know, running a cash register and making change and customer service and, you know, how do you do what your boss says and all those things that we all have to learn. But some people really want to go to and should go to a 4-year college or to college to get a college experience, even if what they earn is not a 4-year diploma, but maybe a different kind of certificate program. There's lots of benefits to this. People live independently, they learn how to take care of themselves, they build a lot of reasons we send other kids to school, right? They build out their repertoire of skills and flexibility to handle different situations. They meet new people. Some people meet their spouses in college. There's lots of different reasons why going to college kind of helps a person transition from being a kid to being an adult. Right now, the District of Columbia doesn't have, but a lot of kids who have intellectual disabilities need some supports to go to college. The District of Columbia doesn't currently have a program designed with those kinds of supports for someone to go to college. Right now, if we want to send somebody to college at the DDS in our voc rehab program, and we want to send them to a 4-year college with the kind of support they need, we have to send them out of state. But what do they have if they're from DC and they go to Connecticut, for example? All of their natural supports are missing, right? Their parents here, their friends here, you know, if there's been aides that have helped them over the years, they're not here. It costs way more for the city to send students out of state to school. So our issue at this moment is we're just looking at starting what's called a big college program at the University of the District of Columbia. And we've got all of the players at the table to talk to. We just had a big summit about this a couple of days ago. And so we have, you know, public schools, the charter schools, UDC, us, DDS, the Office of the State Superintendent, some of the providers, and we just have to figure out then how to get all of those players together to create this one option in our system with a goal of trying to get our first cohort of students in the fall of 2019.
So what I really like how you laid it out is you laid out a gap in the system.
Yeah, I started somewhere else with my story.
So I think if you went for the puzzle pieces, it's like you have a giant puzzle with a big piece that's missing right now.
Right.
And so what you've done is you've identified that one piece that you need to be able to paste in order to give those students the opportunity that they need in order to thrive. Right.
I'm learning so much from you all.
And just so you know, this isn't even remotely this isn't actually a part of anyone's job. That's part of the challenge of it. So right now we're trying to figure out how to patch it together when it's really nobody's full-time job to help create this program. So but I'm one of a handful of people who believes it should be done and done on this time frame. So we'll see how that goes. I'll report back over the coming year or two.
Any other story or reflections that you want to share?
Or online. I see Leslie's joined us, so I want to acknowledge her. Hi, Leslie. Nice to see your face. Hello. Leslie, nice to you're just class today.
Oh, nice. Okay, how was that? I mean, how did you, in terms of storytelling, drawing? Oh, it's natural anyway.
I think of stories more as a lot of what Mateo was saying, where you've got your life story and how all of the different pieces fit together to bring you to where you are now. And so it's, think about it as the prompts of once upon a time, and then this happened, and then this happened, until one day, and then the end.
Yeah.
So you've got all of these different prompts. And so for Mateo started with, once upon a time I had a job in Jersey, and I was loving my life, until one day I got the pink slip. And it becomes this big circle. And so I think a lot of times, at least for me, when I think in stories, I don't think of it as a system, but I really do need to talk it out in order to see how all of the different pieces interrelate.
Yeah, I would say if the word to me is progression, and it feels more linear. I came to systems thinking through causal loop language because that's how I worked on it with my sister, and you definitely talking about different factors and everything. And so I liked your story because that could really fit in. You're getting such feedback loops, and it's places though, because the part with the progression is you don't have chances to get feedback and go back to the beginning and change it. And yours is really, to me, is more of a system. Mine is more of a progression, even with what I was. Whereas Rachel, we didn't talk about Rachel's story, but she was talking about communication within an office and how then thinking about mental models that people use when they look at the calendar, what expectations are and assumptions and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's a system where you can poke it and something's going to happen. Right.
You can pull the threads. It's like a knot. You kind of pull the threads. And
right.
Maybe so you can get it like a smoother weave, but right. You pull one thread.
Yeah.
The whole thing moves around.
Yep. That was somebody who had I liked that, the interdependence. Was it interdependency? Somebody put the spider web.
Yeah.
And I thought that was good.
Okay, well, with this time we have left, let's maybe go around the room and say what you have gleaned, something that you have gleaned through this process. I will just say, like for me, and I said in the beginning, that this was kind of an experiment to kind of blend the basics of systems thinking with storytelling in order to get people started thinking that way. Because certainly this isn't scientific yet. You'd have to go really move into some causal loop stuff. Do some statistical analysis of trend patterns and so forth. Look at those archetypes. You really, there's a whole nother area, maybe 6 more levels of what you could do with systems thinking. But the idea, and the couple clients that I've been working with in the government setting, they just wanted people to get this far, just to get started. So so I really appreciate it. I think I'm really pleased. I think it worked. So what else?
Okay, so I'm a little bit more confident. I walked in here kind of not knowing what to expect, or if I going to make myself proud. Yeah, I'm more confident.
Both with drawing.
With just the whole process of just understanding systems thinking and how it relates. Yeah, I'm trying to how it's going to relate to the work I do and. I'm really thinking about how much systems thinking requires you to draw out how all of the different moving parts are interrelated. Because I think that when we think systems, you very rarely think of a simple system. We are usually dealing with organizations, individuals, things that are unpredictable. And so being able to see it and see where all of those pain points are and those pressure points are can help you predict, or at least be a bit more prepared for where the issues can come in.
I realized that I've actually been really into systems thinking, but like I'm really calling it, because like I study anthropology and that's basically a study of humans, and like one of the big models was like, you know, the interconnection of, you know, social, environment, religion, like all of those parts and pieces. And so I really got into that, and I also was like, you know, like seeing the big picture. But I think recently I'm really interested in how much impact cumulative small changes can have on the system. So kind of the opposite of it, like, you know, drawing the big picture, which I think it can be overwhelming sometimes. So I think right now I'm looking at like, you know, pulling little threads and like addressing like little changes, so that like the cumulative change can happen, but it's, I don't know, like more
It's
feels
the
more
leverage
manageable.
points.
Yeah,
A little bit, identifying those leverage points.
What I thought was really interesting is that I had forgotten how, because there's MIT school and then there's other people that are looking at systems, and MIT has their way of doing it. And that grows out of cybernetics, and then the complexity grows out of the environmental science. And so it was really interesting. It's the first time I really realized how mechanistic Sengi's system thinking is. So that was really valuable to me.
I've played that beer game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I experienced the beer game too. And one thing was wild, like in this government setting that I've been in, they did several different courses, and then they decided to put on a 2-day systems thinking one. And they did the beer game, and it just completely flopped. I mean, they just didn't get it at all, you know, and I was thinking, it's not always the best solution.
What is the beer game?
It's like you have it's about beer production.
Okay.
So you have like 4 different things, so like a bar, a supplier, a distributor, and then the brewery that produces the beer. And it's like you kind of have those, and then you have like these systems of ordering beer and placing orders, and like this is like exchanging. But it's like, but you only know like what you're given and what you give, and so it like you start the process, and then by the end there's like it's like basically backlogs and delays, and you know supply and demand is not matching up. It's like, you know, this weird like crazy, you know, people order all this beer and then like, you know, but the demand isn't changing. So it's like I don't know, it's like kind of a game.
You're reminding me, you walk into a 7-Eleven and you buy, or Total Wine, and you buy a type of beer, and they say, oh, there's a demand for the beer, so then maybe next week they
order like two
more. And so there's this ripple effect.
But it's delayed.
Yeah.
So, but like, you know, like, so like you order it on Tuesday, and then like it gets to the brewery like a week later, and then like, oh, we can't produce that much more beer until next season. And then so it's like
I've seen it done with human resources, like recruiting processes, like just the stages of how much advertising do you have to have out there to get so many recruits, and you know, like maybe an average it takes 6 to 8 weeks to get the person and fill the job, but over time some things might give you too many candidates for the jobs, and then you don't have any candidates. You know, like it goes up and down.
You're talking in terms of budget.
Yeah.
Like in our office, we have a lot of people who speak foreign languages, and after a while, I'll just make up a language. We ended up with like 15 people who spoke Swahili. We're like, how did you end up with 15 people who spoke Swahili? Because of the backlog of getting people in. By the time people got in, then you had a flood, and then you had a bunch of people who had nothing to do. And so, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
So there's lots of examples like almost, but even like marketing and sales example, that sequence. There is a moral to the story to the beer game, but we won't tell you. Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Okay, just to define what you said, MIT, is that how you came up to it, or you came up to it through?
I came up with through biology and environmental, so I pretty much also
And that's
an
how you got the
architect
complexity.
and architect, and so buildings are systems of systems.
Right.
So architects tend to be systems thinkers because everything has to work together. So I get systems, but it's
But you didn't come through it through one of these ways. You came, I mean, what you?
I, as an undergraduate, my first semester, long ago, one of my professors was one of the people who was developing some of the concepts around complexity.
So you were coming like through the Meadows, like through Meadows. She was a
No, that's systems. That's MIT.
Okay.
She's MIT.
Okay.
She does a nice job of explaining it all.
Yeah.
She does, very much so.
That's how I.
Yeah, but
introduced her.
that's MIT. That's very
Okay.
mechanistic,
Yeah.
kind of.
Wanted to invite.
No, it's not another take on systems. It's like, it's sort of, it's saying that a system is a defined and limited, and complexity is not defined.
It's like a closed.
Systems are closed and complexity is open and can't be modeled. And can be defined and can be modeled, and complexity cannot.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Can I jump in for a second on systems and systems thinking?
Please.
Okay, so a perfect way to identify a system is through its purpose. So Matteo used the example of being laid off from his job.
That's Randy, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks Randy, welcome.
Thank you. His purpose was to survive life with money in some way, shape, or form. So he understood that his system structure, because all systems have a structure, that he needed to earn a certain amount of income in order to remain happy. And I'm going to call his structure of life happiness. And so then he started distinguishing parts. So every system has a part. And again, I'm going to use, he parted out his systems through jobs. And then he understood the relationship of the things that he did, or that the function that he performs at his the job that he wants. And then he started looking in other areas of the country that matched it. And then that essentially created a whole system. And then he understood that the feedback from that effort was getting paid and living in DC. So welcome to DC, Matteo. Great.
Very interesting.
And those are the things that you need in the system. And when you're talking about the beer game, oftentimes what's lost is the idea that it's about stock and flow. And goes back to the illustration about the school system. They have a stock of students that have no place to flow to. At the end, where they're trying to do college bound and 4-year post-secondary. And clearly there must be a huge stack of kiddos that need some place to go. And the feedback is that there is no feedback, so there is no system in place, so there is no structure. And that's, I don't know if that was helpful, but that's essentially a system and systems thinking.
Good, thank you.
wanted to just, I know we're a little bit over, but Mateo, could you share your thought? You had a nice thought about systems thinking and graphic recording.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just putting together systems thinking in the context of graphic recording and graphic facilitation. Composition comes to mind. So this has helped me sort of remember, and watching Ben do his thing is helping me reinforce that. Just remembering, you know, as I'm doing graphic recordings and graphic facilitations in service of the client system, making sure that I capture what's going on with the whole system, right? So there are different pieces, there are details, and what's the whole story? So how do I tie that in into a nice composition that's easily consumable and understandable by the client? So thanks for that.
We can find a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, Ben. That's a real gift.
Yeah, Ben.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. This was a great session to be a part of.
Yes, thank you. I knew that I would learn from you all, and I did. I think this being maybe 101, if you're moving groups on, I think focusing on the mental models, things, the assumptions, beliefs, and so forth is one area. The causal loop language, you know, is another area. Trends and patterns, I think we mentioned archetypes. Those are all areas to grow the system thinking. Okay. Are we done?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just another big round of applause for my help. Oh, yes, thank you. The team effort. So we recorded the session, so we will send out a link to that if you want to go back and watch anything, or for those folks online, if you missed anything, you can go back and watch. And then just to give you a heads up, the next 2 sessions, so I can officially tell you, the next Thursday's webinar is the Groves Visual Model for Teaming, and that is with Lori Durnell. And the first word in the description is from Brian. It says, "This is a very big deal." So please join us for that. And then the one on the 21st is called Building Creative Confidence Through Sketching. Building creative confidence through sketching. I had to look it up.
Yeah,
And so
that's what I
that's going to
meant.
be here again. Yeah. Sorry, Ben.
That's what I meant to say when I said sketching.
Sketching.
Yes.
Creative confidence. It's my bad. I should have known beforehand. So yeah. So look out. We'll send out the material links again if you want to see anything. I took pictures of all of the charts and I dropped those in a Google Drive if you want to check those out. And yeah.
Very good.
Great job.
Thank you, everybody.